Okay, good evening, 6:08, we're going to call to order. And we will start with any agenda adjustments.
I don't have any.
Okay, excellent. And that will take us right to any correspondence, resignations, retirements, or nominations.
Just wanted to thank the board for coming a little early tonight and walking through the RMMS renovations. We are, for the public at home, have installed the new boiler for the basement library area. That is in. The electrical work has all been updated, and we're in the process of wall boarding and moving that project along. We're hoping for an expected completion date the Friday before February vacation, and use February vacation to move in and be able to use those facilities beginning in March. We will also debate at times switching back and forth between schools, because we know during basketball season, some nights it gets a little loud here with the gym right next to us, so we might be able to take advantage of the library itself for our meetings as well. So thank you for all coming out a little early. That was much appreciated.
That's a great idea. Maybe we'll kick it off with a board meeting when it's all live.
Yeah.
That's a fun way to, all right. Okay, so we'll move to approval of minutes from November 30th. Karen and Allison, you were absent. So, yeah, you'll have to abstain. I think we can still do it with 4 of us. The following amendments were offered. Page 5, line 12, replace session with second. Page 9, line 14, piece should be plural. So I will make a motion to accept it as amended.
Second? Can I do that? No,
Yeah.
she has to.
You can.
I can?
still second.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so all those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? So it's 2-0-2. And now we are at public input. So we're going to open public input at 6:10. And we'll remain open if there is any. And move over to our principal's report.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Our Brookline enrollment is staying steady between CSDA and RMMS. We have a total of 584 students currently. For some happenings that have been occurring, Mr. Molinari unfortunately is not able to attend tonight, but he has a picture there of the students just arriving in the building and having enjoyable time going to their classroom first thing in the morning. He also wanted me to share that they recently had their Heritage Project, and basically it's a culmination of research done by the students on the culture of their families. And to culminate the activity, they had an international breakfast this past Monday. And from what I understand, I believe the superintendent, assistant superintendent attended, so they might be able to collaborate a little bit more on that. But it sounds like it was a wonderful event for the students. So there's a picture there of the students working on their projects. And at CSDA, as I promised last month, I would just mention about our wonderful turkey trot. As you can see from the photos, there was a live turkey there, AKA Mrs. Boulay. I want to thank the PTO for loaning that wonderful costume for me to wear. But actually, it was really great. I stood out on the front of the building, cheering all the students on, giving high fives as they walked by. There's a few gobbles that was taking place. Mm-hmm. And in the next picture, I just wanted to bring this to show you. This is the annual award that is given to each grade level based on the number of average laps. So there is a little competition there, but the biggest thrill is just having the students compete against themselves to see how many laps they can do around the building in a half hour. And there's some pictures there of the students, so they really had a great time. For upcoming events, report cards were posted last Friday on the 16th. And just a reminder that this Friday, December 23rd, there's no school for students, but it's a professional development day for teachers. And then we'll have a early release on January 30th. We still have some Brookline staffing needs for RMMS. We're still looking for some para-educators and a part-time custodian. And for CSDA, we're still looking for a case manager and a paraprofessional. We're also going to be looking for a nighttime custodian staff as well. And for the district, we're still looking for the psychologist and the special education administrator. But I know interviews are in the process.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was just reading the enrollments over the last 5 years now and just taking it in. All right. We can move to discussion now. So our first topic is the FY23 revenue and expense update.
Okay, in the packet, we have the Rev Expense Report as of December 12th, 2022. Our encumbered and already paid expenses so far leaves us with a negative balance of $198,625. The primary loss is with, as we said last time, special education. We had a lot of unexpected contracted services that puts us in the negative for the special education line. Our revenue, we expect a little bit extra than we budgeted for, about $23,447, which leaves us with a negative unreserved fund balance of $175,178. Hopefully, we have been in a freeze, and hopefully we can maybe unencumber more funds as we go along. We just try to cover our bases and keep in touch with the schools regularly on the orders to see where we end up each month.
Just to give a little more background on that, we have some unfilled positions that are encumbered, and this is pretty much, it's about the same position as last year at this time because of the special ed pieces, and we were able to, as we go through the year and those encumbrances come off, move in a positive direction. Right now, with the unfilled special education administrator, there is some funding there. There's some funding for the IT support person. So there are a number of different things that will impact this, but as we always try to do is put worst-case scenario in November and December. And as you may recall, last year we had this same picture, and then a couple things changed in special ed. Sometimes that could be as simple as a family is transferred or moves out, and a large expense that's encumbered is no longer needed. So we went from about this picture last year to into the positive. But in our next discussion topic, we're going to talk a little bit about the special ed trust and those pieces, just to kind of get it out there for the community. So if there are any, also understand that I didn't mention, we also have the unreserved fund balance. So that is not encumbered. It would be there as we get later in the year. So between the unreserved fund balance, the special ed trust, and other pieces, Kelly believes will be okay, but we're monitoring it closely.
Is the ADA project's temporary storage, is that, well, I guess we still have some funds encumbered, but that's mostly complete, and that was, it looks like totally unbudgeted for, that was a requirement this year, right?
Right, and that was here, and that is, I don't want people to think it's just storage. It's a new curb cut for handicapped accessibility in the front of the building.
Yeah.
It's the work to the playground. It's a playground swing that is available to students of all levels of ability. So there are some different things that we had to do as students matriculated either from RMMS or moved into the district.
So it's really mostly ADA projects, not this temporary
Correct, the storage
It's
is.
a small amount, yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay.
storage is the minimal amount, and I do believe the storage piece of it will be covered through the potential funds from the work we're doing at RMMS.
Okay, thank you. Everyone good? All right, we'll move over to the special ed trust then.
Okay, I just wanted to make the board aware that we did not use the special ed trust last year, so we're sitting at a balance of about $225,000. As you note from the revenue and expense report, most of the unanticipated expenses are in the area of special ed. So if we move further into the year and those balances are staying current, then we will come back to the board. We would recommend a public hearing to utilize some funds from the special ed trust. Kelly would figure out what she believes is the correct dollar amount, and then we would approve an up to dollar amount like we did last year. And then we may or may not have to go there. But to have that on record in the January, February timeframe is good for the auditors. It's good practice for us. So-
We wouldn't use that until near the end of the fiscal year, though, right? And-
Cor-
okay.
Correct. We wouldn't use it until we're almost closing the books.
Okay.
It would tend to go to the unreserved fund balance first. We tend to look at if there's anything in the budget that qualified via the maintenance trust, as well as the anything that became unencumbered because we didn't use it.
Okay.
So there are a variety of paths to take at this point.
And then, I know for the unreserved fund balance, we have to do a special hearing for, I believe, or is it vice versa? One that we have to do a special hearing. Is this,
Public hearing, we said we would do public hearings on both.
are we required for both, or is it,
Um,
I know we said we would. I thought one, we didn't technically have to, but we're going to. and I just-
The unreserved fund balance requires a public hearing.
Okay,
It
and the
used to
other-
require asking the state, it no longer does that, it requires a public hearing. We had always said if we were going to use a special
Right.
ed trust, we would do a public hearing just so everybody would be able to weigh in.
Yep, very good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to go into the meat of it now and get into the budget discussion. Everyone go with that? Yep, okay.
Okay. We have a wealth of documents in your packet tonight, so I'm going to try to walk you through each one relatively quickly, but at the same time, not hesitate to stop me and ask any questions you may have. Starting with the FY '24 Round 4, the Excel spreadsheet. Going to the last page of that spreadsheet again is what I wanted to highlight. At our last meeting, we had the discussion around the 2 MTSS para positions. We had 2 in the budget, we've been unable to fill those. So rather than put 2 new positions in the budget for special ed paras, we just swapped those. And Kelly did the entries to make that swap because it's going from regular ed to special ed, just so we can track it. So with those 2 positions taken out, it means our operating budget would be increasing by $758,102, or 7.2%. If you also recall, we had Jim O'Shaughnessy here last month to give us some guidance on the tax cap. Right now, the budget that we're proposing will be within the tax cap. So we will have this budget and a default budget. We don't have to have a third budget because we're in compliance. And I put, Jim was kind enough to follow up with his attendance at our meeting with an email outlining that, so I put that in the board packet. And what he outlines there is the operating budget is what the tax cap is controlling. The teacher's contract, the special ed trust, the maintenance trust, those are all approved by the voters. Those are special warrant articles. And because they have voter approval attached to each one separately, the voters are indicating whether they want that to move forward or not. So those pieces do not get included in that tax cap calculation. Okay?
And you said that, I was reading something real quick too. You said the teacher's contract is a special warrant this year, so it would not fall in the tax cap this year, but it would next year as part of the operating budget at that point, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And it would be the portion for year 2.
Okay, only year 2 then.
Only year 2,
Okay,
even though
got it.
if the board brings forth a standardized contract, which they haven't decided on, then each year is segmented into that year's budget.
Okay.
But if it is standardized, then it was a contractual agreement, which means it appears both in the operating and the default.
Okay.
Kelly, as always, always tries to provide the board with the information. She left the BTA boxes blank because we don't have an agreement at this time. But she did put in the dollars for maintenance trust, regular contributions to special ed trust, and the SAU budget, which was approved by the governing board. So if the voters passed those warrant articles, the increase goes to $877,85,000, or 7.9. So the teachers is still pending, but at the same time, that provides us the 2 increases, one the budget, one the no warrant articles that we have, and then she was kind enough to make sure she put in the special ed increases of $299,640. As the board knows, those are mandated costs that we have no control over, and they're all student-driven by their IEP or by their placement.
I think it's worth, the reason I missed you on the last, just for a second, is that number is actually higher than the delta between the default and the operating budget. I think it's just worth stating that. So,
Yeah.
as you said, that's a required roughly 300,000. And if you look at the delta between the operating and default, it's far less than 300K.
Correct. In terms of the round fours, the new items list, that was also in your board packet. The only change to those new items was the paras, as I've talked about. So you'll see those have come out of, under RMS for MTSS paras, but were added back in under CSDA for special ed paras. All right? But because they're already included in the budget, there's an offset. Other than that, we didn't make any changes to what we presented last month, because that was the consensus from both the school board and the budget committee, finance committee, I should say, that they understood the difficulties we were facing in special ed and didn't necessarily want to see us go any further. They felt and agreed with the school board from the finance committee standpoint that the administrator at the two buildings, the curriculum administrator, was money well spent, and that we needed that position, so that has remained in the budget. So when you go through the new items, you come up and you see the same percentages as we saw in the Excel spreadsheet, which gives us our items for this year's budget. And at this point, this will be the number that the board would take to the public hearing, which will be in January. And in January, we'll also have we'll have information on the teacher's contract by then. We'll have the other warrant articles, and then some other information we'll cover tonight. With the chair's permission, I'd just like to jump into the default budget, because we'd like to kind of walk you through that.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped to that already.
That's okay. In your board packet, the business department, Kelly and Donna put together the same Excel spreadsheet that goes through line item by line item of the requirements. And if you went to the last page of the Excel spreadsheet, you would see a difference from the proposed operating budget FY24 and the default budget FY24 of $157,572.97, or about 1.4%. The bulk of that is the $110,000 that's in the budget for the administrator's position. If you're looking for approximately the other $47,000, if you went back to the new items, we would take out staff laptops at both schools, because those would be a one-time purchase. We would take out the power supplies at each school, so that there is about $22,000 between teacher laptops and the power supplies. We would take out the mentoring at both buildings, which is $6,000, because again, these would be all considered new items. The audio meter would be something I would take out. The laminated replacement, the classroom flooring, and that would get me basically to our budget. What we would do is, I say that tonight, but if the vote is to pass the default budget, then we would come back, because once they've passed the budget, you as a board have the bottom line number. And how you want to spend that is the board's decision. You know, my recommendations tonight are just one-time new items that kind of, why is the default higher than the operating? But you as a board could decide, no, we definitely need the teachers' laptops, or we want to do the mentoring program, and we would make cuts elsewhere from that bottom line number. Okay? But the biggest piece that I don't think we could afford to do if the budget didn't pass is the administrative position. You know, we might be able to come up with a portion of it and do something like we're doing this year, where we have a part-time person come in, but I don't think we could find the $110,000 unless we had a change in special ed funding or something to that nature. So the default budget is projected at $11,752,000, $794.44. And the FY '24 budget, which the board is proposing, is $11,909,641, and that difference, again, for people at home, is $157,572.97, which is about a 1.4% change. To assist the board in understanding the default budget, Kelly included a breakdown by accounting range, so 1,100 to 1,199, and kind of, that way you'd be able to locate on the Excel spreadsheet where the discrepancies are. And the biggest pieces in the default is the, under special ed, 92,260 for either required para services or services to support a child's IEP, $10,295 contracted services. Those are typically for services that come into our building. And then the biggest piece is out-of-district tuition services, which are $202,020.58. In terms of the out-of-district tuition, this is something that Lauren is working towards when we get a new special ed administrator on board, of developing more in-house programming so that the students, A, get our education, which I think is a great quality, and B, they're not on a school bus for probably 45 minutes a day to go to an out-of-district placement. And it will avoid some costs. We'll have more services in the building, and there'll be costs in the building, but that $200,000, could represent easily 2 or 3 staff members on our CBA schedule. So she's outlined that. The other big increases, health insurance, we had a 4.1% GMR, guaranteed maximum rate. So that increases our budget of $101,096.05. New Hampshire retirement system is up $36,400. And then the retirement benefit is the contractual obligation we have to staff members who are retiring. So that contribution is $43,428. So those two areas really demonstrate the difference between the default and the operating. In terms of one-time expenses that come out, I'd like to note, if you looked at the page and up top under 11 to 1199, you see FY24 teacher lane changes for $17,626. And down below, you see the same one-time expense for 1,100 to 1199, minus $35,538. That's the accounting to show that we have less lane changes next year than we do this year. So instead of just showing what the lane change is, we show this is what it was as a one-time expense, this is what it will be next year as a one-time expense, because that's a contractual obligation under the CBA.
Is the retirement that you mentioned, not the New Hampshire retirement, I know we're obligated there, but that $43,000 line, is that a one-time for this year?
That's one time for this year, which is the buyout for those who
Okay.
provide the board with their retirement letter by December 1st.
So that would go away, but it would fall under NHRS, but not at that level. That was part of the buyout.
That is just our buyout, so that wouldn't go to NHRS, that just is the payment we make. And next year, if nobody retires, that whole 43 comes off the
Goes
book.
away.
If we have 3 or 4 retire, it'll probably be about the same number.
Okay, right, but that we will still, those people that are retiring will come under the NHRS line in some way, right? Isn't that something we hold forever and have to pay into as more people retire from our building, or no?
Well, once they're retired, the replacement person is then contributing, which we're paying for.
Okay,
But we don't
got
pay
it,
for the
I see.
original person.
I see,
Right.
it's
I retire.
our fringe benefits that we're offering, okay,
Right.
I follow.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. And then on the last page of Kelly's information, she provided you with a default summary, just so you could go line item by line item for those people at home and have a really good understanding of what the difference is between the default and the operating. The default budget will also be reviewed the night of the public hearing, as well as deliberative session.
And the public hearing is January 11th.
Thank you.
Yep.
So really, it's to summarize it, it's really whether or not the public wants to go forward with that administrative position of curriculum administrator, really, right? The rest we could probably figure out ways to absorb, but that's the big driver.
That's
And-
correct.
Okay, because I mean, and we all feel like that's important. That was a big topic all summer, and that's why it's here, so, okay, that's helpful to summarize and share that message at every meeting that we have then.
Also in your packet, I just wanted to make sure I called your attention to Jim's email again. Just, we felt it was very important to have provided you a written summary of what he stated, and he will be here at deliberative session to go over any questions that may arise. And then that is it, unless you have questions for me on any of the budget items.
Is it January 11th at 7 o'clock for our, do you know?
One moment, please.
I'm putting it in my work calendar right now,
Yeah, I
too.
gotta
6
put it-
o'clock.
I put in at
6 o'clock, thank you.
6, okay.
And depending where that goes, you could decide that night if you wanted to meet again in January
Okay.
or not. Some years we've met because we have other pieces, and other years we have skipped that and waited to the February preparation.
Any questions? I know I've asked a few. Anyone else have anything?
I was just going to say that, so the public hearing is January 11th. The regularly scheduled board meeting would be January 25th, but then we meet again for deliberative session 2 weeks after that on February 8th, so.
Thank you for the February 8th as well. Okay. I just want to make sure everyone's good on that. I think
No,
we're,
it's helpful to hear that the curriculum coordinator piece was the large driver between the two. And that was addressing concerns and
Yep.
issues.
yeah, I mean, I think we recognize it's not an easy budget cycle. I think everyone recognizes this is a tough one. Okay. Are we all set then?
Yep.
Okay, we'll move over to deliberations then. So that gets us first to, I believe it's the school board calendar. Yeah, 2022, 2023 school board calendar here. Want me to make a motion first? Okay, so I'll make a motion to authorize the superintendent to adjust the school calendar so that students and staff return from the December break on January 3rd, 2023.
So moved.
Is that a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in
Sorry.
favor? That's okay.
Would you want to discuss it?
4-0. Oh, withdrawn on the voting.
I mean, you
Yes.
don't have to, but
No,
just
let's
to give some
discuss it.
context. So other districts' calendars have been changing throughout the fall, and so we do have some level of concern with staffing on January 2nd. We recognize the holiday, the New Year's holiday on the Friday before, but, with other school districts and other companies recognizing on the 2nd, we believe it might pose a problem. So we figured we have already received approval to have Superintendent Corey authorize the switch from our other two boards. And so it made sense if we were going to make a change rather than on the morning of the 2nd, call no school due to staffing, make that call tomorrow so that families can plan for it. So that's the behind the scene. And then that day would be made up at the end of the year. So it would be treated as almost as a snow day. We're just tacking it on in June.
If
We
we,
don't have any snow days yet, right? So this would be, or was this our?
We have one already.
We have one already? Okay.
Well, our elementaries have the snow day.
yeah, I
They
guess
do
it's
have
only
one?
one.
Oh.
I'm
Had one in school.
Oh, that's right, we just had one. I went to work, so I forgot.
And if we didn't do this, would the Brookline School District pay, normally when we go off calendar, it costs a lot more from a busing standpoint, right?
It would.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
No.
Any other discussion on that? I was hoping for a ski day and send the
I
kids
know.
in to go.
Day
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
Whatever, yeah, exactly.
Once you
Take
brought it
them
up, I was
with
like,
you.
ooh, that
I think
sounds
a lot of
nice.
parents will be
I had a
disappointed,
couple friends say
but-
the same thing. How'd you sneak that in? All right, we ready for vote?
Yes.
All right, all in favor? 4-0. Very
Thank
good.
you very much.
Okay, and then our second is around warrant articles for the Maintenance Trust and Special Education Trust.
Right. In looking at the present revenue and expense report, one of the concerns that Kelly and I raised in business meeting was we typically use the fund balance to fund maintenance trust and special ed trust. We're not sure this year if that's going to be possible. So we reached out to Jim O'Shaughnessy, and he advised us that we can do a combination article where it talks about if there are unreserved funds, they can go to maintenance trust or to special ed trust. But if not, the articles can be proposed as tax articles. So you'd be raising and appropriating the maintenance and the special ed trust. I wanted to bring it up tonight because really our next time together is the public hearing, and I just wanted the board to kind of officially kind of take a position that you would support looking at those type of articles at the public hearing, because otherwise you may not have the funding for the maintenance trust or the special ed trust. Special ed trust, we haven't really used it yet, so it doesn't have as big a concern to me, but the maintenance trust does, because we're constantly battling our older buildings. So what I'm looking for is just a motion that allows Kelly and I to propose articles for the public hearing that are in that format. And then at the public hearing, once it's done and you've gotten public feedback, the board still controls the warrant and decides which ones and which formats they go in. But I didn't want the board to be surprised by seeing new wording around language. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Real quick, I'm gonna
I'm
close
just
public,
taking that
I'm
in.
gonna close public hearing at 6:40. Keep going.
Okay.
So I guess, I have like reservations just because there's always a debate over passing those articles anyway. Is there a possibility of almost splitting it into two separate articles? Or does that not make, that defeats the purpose?
Well, they would be separate, so maintenance trust would be,
No, I mean in terms of like funding it through taxation versus funding it with the unreserved fund balance.
right. Well, the way it would have to be worded is to state if the unreserved fund balance existed, those funds would be used to fund, let's just stay on the maintenance trust for a minute, the maintenance trust. If, let's say, maintenance trust is 155, there was only $100,000 in the fund balance. The article would be written in such a way that the surplus, the maintenance, the unreserved funds would be utilized to offset the maintenance trust request, with the remaining balance being raised through taxes.
Taxation. Would we have to hold any sort of hearing? I know that it's, part of me is like, that makes no sense because they've already voted it in, if it would pass. But the other part is like, do we have to hold a public hearing saying, hey, we are going to be raising this through taxation?
That's what January 11th would be.
Okay.
So the next time we came back together, we would have what I'll call almost two sets of warrant articles
Okay.
for the board to consider, for the public to comment on, and then at the end of the night, we would have to determine what is our warrant article that the board is endorsing and signing off on to go to the warrant or
Okay.
deliberative session.
I guess personally, I'm open to the language. I'm just wondering, I was quickly trying to scroll to see what's in our, we have whatever that new contingency fund is for a couple $100,000, and I just wonder if.
It's 140 is in the unreserved fund balance approximately that you've already passed.
Okay, that's what came over from last year that's sitting there now?
That's
Okay.
sitting there right now, and if that's not spent, that continues over to next year. And that would be the money that would start to fund these accounts. But let's say you had to use that because of the special ed cost or the ADA compliance cost,
Okay,
then you may, let's say you only had 100,000 left out of that fund balance. It's just more getting it out tonight so you have time to think about it. The answer can be no. It's just more, we've got about $155,000 worth of maintenance items, if we only end up with 75, then we'll do what we can, and we'll, as a board, we'll work together to figure out the priority items. And also understanding that we're 18 months away, so some of these special ed costs will go up because new homes will be sold, and potentially there'll be transfers and people will leave district, and potentially some of those costs will go down.
And I'll just point out that the items that are currently slated for the maintenance trust are some phase 2 for replacement tables for cafeteria at RMS that are pretty desperate need. We have end-of-life burglar alarm at RMS, updated wiring at RMS for $23,000, end-of-life access points for RMS for $7,250, but the fire panel at CSDA is $100,000. We've put that off for a few years, so that's not really something we can put off any longer. And then $10,000 phase 2 for 3 replacement exterior doors, and then $10,000 for exterior lighting here at CSDA. Bulbs to LED and replace 9 posts. But it's really that fire panel at $100,000 that would be a challenge to come up with that large sum, and it's desperately needed.
The other option you have is you could decide to potentially do that fire panel as a separate warrant article. So you could list that totally separate, take it out of the maintenance trust, and then it would be subject to the up or down vote of the voters. But understand that the voters say no, no means no.
Yeah, no.
So I just, again, present all options, but each one has a risk. I like the idea of it being in the maintenance trust and providing some flexibility on the maintenance trust.
So, we used to have contingency, and that sat there. But the unreserved fund balance now rolls every year and may not, because I thought, like, we've developed the special ed trust over years of essentially savings, right?
Yes.
Do all those contingency funds that we saved forever, are those still sitting around, or what happened to that?
No, those lapse. So all of our funds, other than the special ed trust, at the end of the year, if they're not
They
used, they
lapse,
go
okay.
back.
The special ed is a unique one that does.
Correct.
Okay.
So with the unreserved fund balance, every August, we come to the board, and Kelly provides you with a memo recommending how much to have in the unreserved fund balance.
Yep.
Right now, that number's at $140,000. That's what we approved last August.
Yep.
That money lapses to the bottom again. Then we go through deliberative session and voting, and then we come back, and the board can then make a vote of what they want in the unreserved fund balance again next year.
Oh, I see. We carry it as a line. I misunderstood how it was,
Yep.
accounting was for it.
If there's
Okay.
money.
If there's money.
Yeah.
So can I, just as a new member, can I make sure that I'm hearing you correctly and understanding it, that the question you're gonna put forward potentially to the voters is whether that unreserved fund balance can be used either for the maintenance or the special ed?
No.
No, okay, I just,
No. No,
I'm
the-
sorry, I'm
the-
trying to
it's okay.
understand.
The unreserved fund balance is there.
Okay.
That fund is controlled by the board.
Yep,
The requirement is to have a public hearing
okay,
to spend it.
yep,
So that's separate, it exists, it's done.
yep,
What I'm saying is, over and above the unreserved fund balance, we usually have surplus that is then used to offset warrant articles. Traditionally, special ed trust and maintenance trust.
yep,
My worry this year is we won't potentially have as large a surplus to offset those articles.
okay,
So rather than potentially not doing like that fire panel,
yeah,
putting it either as a separate warrant article or
okay,
making the maintenance trust a raise and appropriate for this year.
gotcha.
And in Hollis, maintenance trust is raise and appropriate, that's how we do. And again, it's kind of an offset because if I give it back to you and then you pass the article, the taxes have basically stayed the same. You know, as you may recall, we stand up there and we say, this will mean that you won't get 6 cents per 100,000 back off your taxes.
Right,
All right? Well, instead of saying that, we'd be saying, if you pass the article, it'll cost you 6 cents,
okay,
you know?
gotcha.
Just correct me if I'm wrong. When we go up, because we're SB 2, they can't change the warrant article itself. It's just dollar values in the
At the-
deliberative?
At deliberative session, they can't touch the teacher's contract. but the other articles.
The other ones they can. So if they
can-
decided, like, if we brought it up as raise and appropriate, they could strike that, amend it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But somebody also could get up and say, I'd rather see the fire panel in the operating budget, and I make a motion to raise the budget by $100,000.
Right.
So all of that can happen at deliberative session.
Okay.
What tends to happen is the voters respect all the work that's gone into the process and tend to just put it forward to the voters as is. But that's why I'm saying this public hearing would be a little different, and we can get you some language to look at that identifies that. But it's just more, I wanted the board to kind of formally say that they're open to looking at it
Yeah, yeah.
through this motion, but at the same time, you're not committing that that's the way the warrant's going to be, because you're going to get public hearing input, and you're going to make a decision then.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna make him, I don't know how to say this one. Make a motion to include in the warrant articles for allocations to the maintenance trust and the special ed trust, which we will review at our next meeting. Second. All those in favor? 4-0, all right. Okay, great. We do have non-public this evening, and that's where we're at now. So I'll make a motion that the board by roll call go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A32A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, and C, to discuss a matter which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of a person other than a member of the body or agency itself.
Second?
Second by Allison, you want to start too?
Allison, aye?
Colleen, aye.
Karen, I.
Ken, aye. So we are in non-public, closing out at 6:50.